Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The opinions of hosts and guests do not necessarily reflect the opinion of this network.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama. This is Ghost Talk with 187 PI. Sit back and prepare yourselves for an adventure into the paranormal world with host Shelley Robertson and 187 PI research team. Ghost Talk is broadcasting live from Ohio's most haunted jail. Learn about their ongoing research at the jail and abroad, investigation techniques, and their personal encounters. Here is your host of Ghost Talk and 187 PI founder, Shelley Robertson.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Ghost Talk Radio. With me as your host, Shelley Robertson. Tonight I have a very interesting show planned for you. I will be discussing Labor Day, history, mayhem, and hauntings. I would like to invite all my listening friends out there to join me in chat at WBHM-DB.com, where you can join in on the conversation and ask me any questions you might have. So, let's start off with some history on Labor Day. You know how I just love the history of things. Labor Day this year, of course, you all know, because you probably got some barbecues and stuff planned this weekend, is a Monday, September 7th. Okay. Labor Day, it pays tribute to the contributions and achievements of American workers, and it's traditionally observed on the first Monday in September. It was created by the labor movement in the late 19th century and became a federal holiday in 1894. Labor Day weekend, it also symbolizes the end of summer for many Americans, and a lot of people celebrate it with parties and family gatherings, street parades, and even athletic events. And many of you, I'm sure, will be having some fun in the sun this weekend, maybe having cookouts, gatherings with friends or family. And due to, what's going on in the world today, I'm sure you're all going to be paying special attention to that social distancing. Am I right? So, with all that, let's see. How did Labor Day come to be? Well, as with everything else, there is some history behind this joyous day. You all know it's an annual celebration of workers and their achievements. And in the late 1800s, at the height of the Industrial Revolution in the United States, believe it or not, the average American worked 12-hour days, 7 days a week, in order to make just a basic living, okay? And despite restrictions in some of the states, you guys are just going to be flabbergasted if you don't already know this. Children as young as 5 or 6 worked in mills, factories, and mines across the country, earning just a fraction of the amount of money that their parents or other adults made in wages, which is pitiful, and I guess that's how probably how the child labor laws also came about. People of all ages, particularly the very poor and maybe recent immigrants to the country, they often faced extremely unsafe working conditions with insufficient access to fresh air, sanitary facilities such as bathrooms and such, and even breaks. They would work people without even giving them a break. Well, of course, as manufacturing, in the agricultural area started gaining momentum, right? American employment labor unions, they had first appeared in the late 18th century, okay? They grew more prominent and vocal, okay? And they began organizing strikes and rallies to protest poor conditions and to compel employers to renegotiate hours and pay, right? So many of these events, of course, as you can imagine, back in the day when things kind of went amok, many of the events, they turned violent during this period, including the infamous Haymarket riot of 1886, in which several Chicago policemen and workers were killed. Others gave rise to long-standing traditions, okay, like let's say on September 5th, 1882, 10,000 workers took unpaid time off to march from City Hall to Union Square in New York City, holding the first Labor Day parade in U.S. history. Now, that is very interesting. Can you imagine 10,000 people? You know, the idea of a working men's holiday, right? Celebrated on the first Monday in September, it caught on in other industrial centers across the country, and many states passed legislation recognizing it. Congress would not legalize the holiday until 12 years later, however, when kind of a watershed moment in the American labor history brought workers' rights squarely into the public's view. On May 11th, in 1894, employees of the Pullman Palace Car Company in Chicago went on strike to protest wage cuts and the firing of union representatives. And then it was on June 26th that the American Railroad Union, led by Eugene Debs, called for a boycott of all Pullman railway cars, crippling railroad traffic nationwide. Well, to break the Pullman strike, the federal government dispatched troops to Chicago, unleashing a wave of riots that resulted in the deaths of more than a dozen workers. Well, in the wake of this massive unrest, and in an attempt to repair ties with American workers, Congress passed an act making Labor Day a legal holiday in the District of Columbia and the Territories. Well, then on June 28, 1894, President Grover Cleveland signed it into law. More than a century later, the true founder of Labor Day has yet to be identified. Many credit a fellow named Peter McGuire, co-founder of the American Federation of Labor, while other people have suggested that Matthew McGuire, a secretary of the Central Labor Union, first proposed the holiday. Well, we don't know for sure, so it's still a mystery. Labor Day is still celebrated in cities and towns across the United States with parades, picnics, barbecues, fireworks, displays, and, of course, other public gatherings. And it has even become commercialized. I mean, everything is Labor Day sale this and Labor Day sale that. So everybody's getting in on the Labor Day holiday celebration. Now, for many Americans, particularly children and young adults, Labor Day also represents the end of summer and the start of back-to-school season. Yay, that's what I was always looking forward to as a kid. Not. But now with all of that, that's kind of the history. Let's get into some of the mayhem and hauntings that have happened on Labor Day, okay? Let's look at the incident, which I mentioned earlier, in the Haymarket Square that happened in Chicago, okay? In 1886, a labor demonstration in Chicago's Haymarket Square, it turned deadly when a bomb exploded. starting a riot that led to deaths of workers and police officers. It became known as one of the most famous labor incidences in American history and eventually led to the conviction of 8 conspirators from the labor movement. Okay? But Haymarket was certainly not the only violent labor event during Chicago's Gaslight area. All right, Chicago is just a plethora of stuff, from the mob to gangs and to this, right? Things like this. Unfortunately, for most of the workers of the Gaslight era in Chicago, it's just words. They were not unable to change the conditions under which they labored, okay? Long hours, poor pay, that plagued the majority of the jobs that could be attained by the lower classes. Now, the employers, they never failed to believe that workers should be thankful for whatever job they could get and for whatever pay they were offered, you know. And it certainly wasn't a sentiment to that was shared by the people that actually did the work, you know. It was like they thought, be glad that we gave you a job. Be glad we're giving you could be making no money, which that's a terrible way to look at it. Well, by the 1870s, the workers were beginning to stand up for what they believed in and fight for their rights to safe working conditions, fair pay, and decent hours. Let me tell you what, though, those rights would not come easily, leading to bloodshed and violence and death all across Chicago, right? Well, one of the first employers to suffer from labor disputes was Cyrus Hall McCormick. He developed a mechanical reaper for the farming industry that actually changed the farm industry in America like forever, right? The efficiency of this reaper on the flat farmlands of the Midwest, it made it possible to grow more, plant more, harvest more, and most farmers, they couldn't believe it. They were just so thrilled. The new invention made McCormick a millionaire many times over. Now, this fella, McCormick, he was a stout man, and he was known to have a huge temper and perhaps an ever greater persistence to succeed, right? He believed that he truly deserved all the success that God had given him. He fought his many competitors with constant lawsuits, widespread advertising, and yearly field days where his reapers would be put up against other models just to prove how great his was. This fella, McCormick, he offered easy credit, good service, and a product that was far superior to anything else on the market. So, throughout the 1870s, he sold more than 10,000 reapers and binders a year. Well, McCormick's wealth came from his assembly procedures, you know, his sales methods that put thousands of reapers into the fields where wheat would have rotted before, and his constant improvements on the machines did make him a pioneer in the industry. But it was also done on the backs of workers, you know. Even though he was generous to a number of charities and causes in Chicago, including the Presbyterian Theological Seminary, and it was later named in McCormick's honor, he was mostly known for being tight-fisted with his money. His tight handling of his money did not endear McCormick to his employees. He worked them hard, including his own brother, for low wages. Like all the other Chicago Titans during the Gilded Era, he was puzzled when employees were not grateful for what they were given and was encouraged when they dared to ask and organized, or he was enraged, when the employees dared to ask for, more money, less hours, right? So It was by the 1870s. All of the major employers in the region, including McCormick, they saw constant unrest among workers over job conditions, wages, and shorter work days. And there was no question that the conditions in many of the plants were poor, and men worked 10 to 12 hours 6 days a week for very little pay. So strikes and protests obviously soon became a commonplace, right? Now, it was during the 10th summer of 1877 when there were riots in the city that were part of a nationwide strike effort by railroad workers protesting wage cuts. Now, this fella, Marshall Field, he volunteered to use his delivery wagons to transport policemen from one problem area to another. 3 men were killed and 8 wounded during a demonstration at the Burlington Railroad roundhouse, and then the next day 10 more strike sympathizers were killed at the Halsted Street Viaduct. Now, federal troops who came directly from fighting Indians out west, all right, because you got to remember this stuff was going on too, they were sent in to restore order, right, with these riots. Now, the following year, the fella Field and McCormick, and some others actually, they secretly subscribed to a fund that would furnish Gatling guns and uniforms for the Illinois National Guard. Now, this was done according to McCormick's assistant to prepare for what danger, if any, was to be anticipated from the communistic element in the city, they were calling it, right? Well, as you can imagine, strikes and protests continued, but the Haymarket Square riot in 1886 would change the face of the labor movement forever. The events that culminated in blood at Haymarket Square had been brewing since the start of Chicago's Gilded Age. The years after the Civil War saw a rise in power of the labor unions. Many prominent capitalists had preached the moral correctness of the war, often more interested in profits that could be made from it than because of any, just cause. But they failed to predict what would happen afterward. Many of the veterans who came home after a war had a different mindset than when they'd left. As soldiers, they had worked together amid danger, death, and destruction, fighting a war that would become about, ending slavery. Now, from that, to equate the over-demanding expectations of their employers, for next to nothing wages, mind you, with slavery was a simple one. Warring with the slave drivers was seen as necessary, but the trouble was there were a lot of soldiers, but no real army. So without a union, laborers were at a great disadvantage when compared with their employers. Workers were able to come together, strike, raise hell, but only for limited periods of time. Unions of the day, many of which were newly organized, were long on principles, but short on any real sense of power, save for disruption of work. So once they began working through all the political process, then things began to change. They scored their first victory in March of 1867 with the passage of a state 8-hour workday statute. But their sense of accomplishment was short-lived. The law was easily circumvented by employers who reduced pay, discharged employees, or found loopholes to continue working their men for 10 hours a day or more. Such manipulation of the law, it angered the workers, and unrest and violence occurred throughout the city. Many of the workers and union leaders, they were not content to let strikes and walkouts speak for them, okay? Many of them endorsed a more violent form of action. That action reached its peak in Haymarket Square, where rural farmers came into Chicago to exchange produce for cash in May of 1886. Now, the Haymarket Square riot began as a mass meeting of workers to protest police actions against strikers at the McCormick factory. 6 workers demonstrating an 8-hour work day had been killed by factory guards, and tensions were running high. The rally at Haymarket Square involved about 2,500 workers who turned out in the rain to listen to speeches by local labor leaders, Albert Parsons, Samuel Fieldman, and August Spies, right? Now, despite the fact that all three men were considered dangerous agitators and anarchists, by city business leaders, of course, Mayor Carter Henry Harrison issued a parade permit for the gathering, believing there was no cause for concern. However, police officials sent nearly 700 officers to the scene. Police Inspector John Bonfield led his superiors to believe that a citywide riot might take place. Mayor Harrison visited the scene, and finding it peaceful, he ordered all the reserve officers to be sent home, right? So Bonfield refused, and 2 hours later ordered his men to disperse the crowd. As the policemen moved into formation, a crudely made pipe bomb was thrown into the midst of about 200 police officers. The bomb exploded, and one officer was killed, and 6 others were mortally wounded. In retaliation, the policemen opened fire on the crowd and began shooting at the fleeing protesters. They continued to fire for more than 5 minutes. And, we must take a short break. And after this short break, we'll be right back with more Ghost Talk Radio. And I will tell you what happened at the end and the hauntings. You are listening to Ghost Talk Radio on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk radio.
Listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to Ghost Talk Radio. With me is your host, Shelley Robertson, and tonight I am talking about Labor Day, the hauntings and mayhem, right? In history. Prior to the break, I was talking about the Haymarket riot that happened. And, well, if you missed the first part of the show, no worries. You can listen to the full show archive on Spreaker, Google Play, iTunes, iHeartRadio at your leisure. Pretty much, we're at so many places. So I would be willing to bet that whatever listening service you have subscribed to, you could probably find us there. But anyways, okay, so let's get back to what happened after this gunfire ensued, right? The police were just shooting wildly at everyone, right? So by this time now, Mayor Harrison, he had pleaded for calm in the wake of this attack, but there was very little people interested in listening to him, okay? Police officials were determined to not only find the man who threw the bomb, but also track down those who caused it to be thrown in the first place, namely the leaders of the labor union who organized the event. The policemen of Chicago began a reign of terror among the city's working-class citizens, right? All rights were suspended, and hundreds of suspects were arrested, beaten, and interrogated at all hours of the night. False confessions were violently extracted from those who were thought to be anarchists or sympathizers of the labor unions. Whoever the bomb thrower actually was, he faded away in history. They never found him, and he got away, right? Eventually, though, through 8 so-called conspirators, they were brought to trial, and it was widely believed that the defendants had the deck, so to speak, stacked against them, right? Rumor had it that the jurors in the trial had been given $100,000 by Chicago business leaders, and that prior to the verdict being read, Marshall Field was already lobbying that the men be hanged. So you can imagine back in that time, that's a lot of money, right? $100,000. So this Marshall Field fella, he went to City Hall and he demanded that the mayor repress free speech in the city in the interest of public safety. Well, of course, the mayor refused to do this, even after Field informed him that he represented great interest in Chicago. Well, obviously, that mayor, couldn't be bought, and thank goodness. Well, 7 of the defendants received a death sentence. The 8th was given a sentence of 15 years in prison. All of them were tried and sentenced on conspiracy charges to incite violence that led to the deaths of the police officers. On November 11th, 1887, August Spies, Albert Pearsons, George Engel, and Adolph Fisher, they were hanged at the Criminal Courts building on Hubert Street. Another of the conspirators died in an explosion, and the death sentences of others were commuted to prison terms. As you can imagine, for many years, the police officers who died at Haymarket Square, they were seen as martyrs. But slowly, thanks to the rising power of the labor unions, that perception changed. Even after all these years, debate still rages about the cause and effect of the riot at Haymarket Square. But it cannot be denied that it was one of the many bloody events that solidly shaped the city, right? And as you can imagine, with this tragic event, it certainly has left its mark, and many believed it was this event that has resulted in some of the paranormal activity in this area of the city. There have been reports of apparitions being seen, either appearing or disappearing. Some have reported as looking like a police officer in a dated uniform. Strange balls of red lights have also been seen in this area. And really, it's no wonder that Chicago is reportedly a very haunted city. You take the Haymarket incident that happened over Labor Day, and you add them to the Labor Day killings that happen there every year. For example, in 2016, there were 35 people killed in incidences on Labor Day. Add them to all the other incidents of violence and compound it by all the mob killings like the Valentine's Day Massacre, and you have the perfect conditions for hauntings. And, this very well explains why there are so many reports of paranormal activity there, not just in homes and buildings, but also along the streets and roadways, parks, cemeteries, right? And mind you, everyone, tonight's show just featured incidents that happened in Chicago. There are hundreds of tragic. I'm tongue-tied. Tragic. There are hundreds of tragic events all over the United States and major cities on Labor Day that most likely have left their marks in regards to paranormal activity on Labor Day. Not events been caused by humans on Labor Day, folks. Mother Nature herself has brought her wrath on Labor Day, resulting in hundreds of deaths and, of course, reports of paranormal activity. So, for example, let's just take a look at one incident, okay? And this was the Great Labor Day Hurricane of 1935, formerly known as Hurricane 3, and it was the most intense Atlantic hurricane to ever make landfall on record in terms of pressure. And it tied with Hurricane Dorian in 2019 for the strongest landfalling Atlantic hurricane by maximum sustained winds, with wind speeds at over 185 miles an hour. Wow, right? It was also the most intense Atlantic hurricane on record until Hurricane Gilbert in 1988. It was the fourth tropical cyclone, the third tropical storm, the second hurricane, and second major hurricane of 1935 Atlantic hurricane season. The Labor Day hurricane was one of 4 Category 5 hurricanes on record to strike the United States, along with Hurricane Andrew in 1992, Hurricane Camille in 1969, Hurricane Michael in 2018, and let me tell you, in addition, it was the third most intense Atlantic hurricane on record in terms of barometric pressure, behind Hurricane Gilbert in 1988 and Hurricane Wilma in 2005. Now, the compact and intense hurricane caused catastrophic damage to the upper Florida Keys as this storm surge of approximately like 18 to 20 feet, it swept over the low-lying islands, okay? The hurricane's strong winds and the surge destroyed nearly all the structures between Tavernier and Marathon. The town of Islamorada was obliterated. Portions of Key West extension of the Florida East Coast Railway was severely damaged or destroyed. And in addition, many veterans died in work camps created for the construction of the overseas highway, in part, not only from the hurricane, in part due to poor working conditions as well, right? The hurricane also caused additional damage in Northwest Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas. So let me tell you, this was one bad hurricane. Now, the Labor Day hurricane, it was the most intense tropical cyclone known to make landfall in the Western Hemisphere, having the lowest sea level pressure ever officially recorded on land. And like I said, the intensity was 189 miles an hour. Now, September 2nd, which was Labor Day, okay, at about 2 p.m., this fella named Fred Gant, Assistant Administrator of the Florida Emergency Relief Administration, well, he requested a special train to evacuate the veterans' work camps located in the Upper Keys. It departed Miami at 4:25 p.m., and it was delayed by a drawbridge opening, and then some obstructions came across their tracks, and then mounted with poor visibility. It was just an unbelievable trip. Well, the train finally arrived at Isla Mirada station, and that's on the upper Mayhem Key, and it got there about 8:20 p.m. Now, this coincided with an abrupt wind shift from the northeast, which was Florida Bay, to the southeast Atlantic Ocean, and the arrival on the coast of the storm surge. Okay? Now, this hurricane left a path of near total destruction in the Upper Keys, centered on what is today the village of Isla Mirada. The storm caused wind and flood damage along the Florida Panhandle and into Georgia, and significant damage to the Tampa Bay area. After the third day of the storm, corpses swelled up and split open in the subtropical heat. And this was according to the rescue workers. How horrifying. Public health officials, they ordered plain wood coffins holding the dead to be stacked and burned in several locations. The National Weather Service estimated 408 deaths from the hurricane. Bodies were recovered as far away as Flamingo and Cape Sable on the southwest tip of the Florida mainland, right? Now, 3 veterans work camps existed in the Florida Keys before the hurricane. Number 1 was on Windley Key. Number 3 and number 5 were on Lower Mayhem Key. And according to the camp payrolls for August, they listed 695 veterans. They were employed in the project to complete the overseas highway, which was connecting the mainland with Key West. All right. Now, in the aftermath, it was determined that dead bodies were scattered throughout the Keys, and the rapid decomposition, they created, just horrific gas-like conditions, okay? So state and local health officials, they demanded a ban on all movement of bodies, and they also demanded immediate burial or cremation in place. And it was the next day that the Governor Schultz, he ordered that to be, all right? So cremations began on Saturday. 38 bodies were burned together at a collection point beside Snake Creek. Over the next week, 136 bodies were cremated on Upper Mayhem Key at 12 different locations. On the Lower Key, 82 were burned at 20 sites. And on numerous small keys in Florida Bay, bodies were either burned or buried right where they were found. All right. Although the congressional record, that gives a report of 485 victims of the hurricane. 257 of them were veterans and 259 of them were civilians. And the records also show that there were 694 World War I veterans, and they've got their names there and got them as status as survived the hurricane. So there was a lot of survivors, thank goodness, but nearly 500 people died, right, and were scattered about. Now, in Isla Mirada, standing just east of US 1 at mile marker 82, near where the post office stood, is a monument designed by the Florida Division of the Federal Art Project, and it was constructed using Florida Keys limestone by the Works Progress Administration, and it was unveiled on November 14, 1937, with several hundred people attending this memorial unveiling. Now, the Florida Keys Memorial is known locally as the Hurricane Monument and was built to honor, of course, hundreds of American veterans and local citizens who perished during that great hurricane, right? Now, in 1937, the cremated remains of approximately 300 people were placed within the crypt in front of the monument. So, but they were nameless. They didn't even have the names of them or anything. Now, due to the devastation Mother Nature leashed out, right, it is no wonder why there have been many, many reports of paranormal activities in the areas destroyed where the lives were taken. There have been reports of full-body apparitions, disembodied screams and cries, and one that I found very interesting, gusts of winds that kick up out of nowhere and stop as quickly as they started, right? Now, do we know if the hauntings in these areas I talked about tonight are intelligent hauntings or residual hauntings? Well, I do not know for certain. Much of the poor reports would indicate that a great many are residual hauntings, okay? And after we come back after this short break, I will explain exactly what those are, the differences are. You are listening to Ghost Talk Radio on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to Ghost Talk Radio. With me is your host, Shelley Robertson, and tonight I have been talking about Labor Day, hauntings and history and mayhem. And right before the break, we got done with the hurricane. And I'm going to tell you, folks, for those of you who don't know, the difference between residual hauntings and intelligent hauntings. And, some of you may know and some of you may not. So, the difference of a residual haunting and an intelligent haunting is that a residual haunting or activity can occur when something traumatic, stressful, or, horrific occurs, such as a murder or something. So negative energy is literally blasted into the atmosphere, causing the atmosphere to imprint or record the events, kind of like a tape recorder or a video recorder, right? And it will play the events over and over and over again. Sometimes it just, certain conditions have to be met and where it'll happen. Sometimes it just does it every day at a certain time. Sometimes, you never know. You just have to watch for the pattern when you get a residual haunting, okay? Now, the entities involved in a residual haunting or paranormal activity, they're unaware of their surroundings, okay? This is not an intelligent haunting. Therefore, there is no interaction between you and the entity. Residual haunting activity can also be caused by a positive energy blasted into the atmosphere as well. So, like many times, I'm sure y'all have heard of somebody had a ghost story where they could hear sounds of a party, or they heard music, or they heard singing or dancing or laughter, or what have you, like happy sounds, right? And when they enter the room where they thought they heard the noise, there's no one there, right? So, positive things can also impact the environment, cause a residual haunting. And residual haunting activity, of course, can be the ghosts that were living people, right? So with an intelligent haunting or an interactive paranormal activity, let's go back to Einstein's theory, okay? As matter beings, we are all energy beings on a quantum level, all right? We are made up of atoms and neutrons. And as matter or energy beings, we have intelligence. We have an energy aura that surrounds our living bodies, okay? And this aura is created by the millions of electrical currents that are created throughout our bodies. Our brains creates the brain waves, and that's a form of pure energy, and that transmits our thoughts and what we see and what we feel, etc., right? Now, when our mortal form dies, right, the aura that constantly surrounds our bodies leaves our bodies. And, experiments and scientific studies and stuff, we lose about 6 ounces on the instance of death, right? What is the 6 ounces? Perhaps it is the energy leaving our body, or if some people might want to call it your soul. Well, this energy or the aura, or if you want to call it your soul, is carrying the information of what it used to be. If it can do this, then why couldn't it also carry our intelligence? If it can carry our former intelligence of our previous life, then it should be able to interact with us intelligently. So when we see this aura, we call it a ghost. If this ghost is able to interact with us, is aware of us, can touch us, can communicate with us, then this, my friends, is an intelligent or interactive haunting. So that's the difference between the residual and intelligent hauntings. So moreover, moving on, we're going to go, and I'm going to tell you about just another horrific Labor Day thing that's caused hauntings. And there was this Labor Day massacre in Youngstown, Ohio in 1937, okay? Police in Youngstown, Ohio, they used tear gas on women and children, including at least one infant in his mother's arms, during the historic strike at Republic Steel. That's a big organization there. Now, one union organizer recalled that he thought that the Great War had started over again because gas was flying all over the place and shots were flying and flares going up. And it was the first time he'd ever seen anything like it in his life, I guess. Well, some strikers were killed and many others, included women and children, they were injured. A reporter with the local press described how every time a worker peeked out from inside the steel workers' hall, somebody shot at them. Okay, so it was that terrible. Now, according to the U.S. Senate Civil Liberties Commission, which investigated the strike, they said 16 died and 283 people were injured. In addition, one policeman received a bullet, but he didn't die. Other people say there were 17 deaths, but regardless, there were 16 deaths from this. And many of those people that were killed were shot in the back while running from police. Horrid. Now, the origins of the strike lie in the Great Depression that started 9 years earlier, right? The Act of 1933 encouraged collective bargaining in an effort to keep people working and production growing, all right? Well, in 1937, the nation's largest steel maker, U.S. Steel, recognized the steel workers organizing committees as representative of its union employees, all right? So then you had a number of companies, including Republic Steel, Youngstown Sheet and Tube, Inland Steel, and Bethlehem Steel, and they refused to recognize laws that gave workers the right to organize, okay? So while these little steel companies wanted to continue with representation committees that they controlled, the Wagner Act and the creation of the National Labor Relations Board in 1935 allowed that if a majority of workers voted for a union representation, the company had to recognize and bargain with the union. Now, Republic and its anti-union chairman, Thomas Girdler, they were willing to defy the law and intimidate their workers. Their mills became armed camps. They declared war on their workers and made decisions that triggered an intense battle. They had their own private police forces with plenty of weapons and ammunition, including, folks, believe this, machine guns. Republic and Youngstown Sheet and Tube purchased 160,000 rounds of ammunition for the Youngstown district. And as you can imagine, this tragic event has also been a cause of paranormal activity. There have been reports of people hearing cries of a baby, screams of a woman in this area, as well as phantom gunshots and strange mists or fogs that appear from nowhere, believe it or not. Now, I'd like to take a moment to let you know what's going on here at the jail right quick. Got a lot of stuff going on at the jail. A ghost hunt on the board for September 26th. I do have to say it is nearly sold out. We only have 2 tickets remaining, so if you are thinking about attending this one, don't think too long. Just go to our website, 187pi.com, and you can get more information, get a ticket if you want to come to this event. We also have a public celebrity ghost hunt coming October 17th with Doogie, Stephen McDougal, from the hit shows Haunted Towns and Haunted Live, along with Jason Hale of the Fearless Ones and the Fearless Forum. This is a hunt you won't want to miss. They are coming in and you'll get a chance to meet and greet them. It's going to be a great event. There's also a payment plan for VIP tickets at the website. So these tickets are selling out. So if you're thinking about coming and seeing them, you might want to get your tickets like pretty quickly. And events, we also have 2 exciting weekend celebrity ghost hunting events on the board happening in the first 2 weekends in February, featuring Santiago Cirillo, who is known in the paranormal world as the Paranormal Magnet. Starred in numerous movies and shows, including The Walking Dead and the paranormal movie Rosalie, which has won many awards. You can find out more about these events and tickets at 187pi.com. Get your tickets early because they are limited. And as for our private investigation sessions, we only have a couple of Fridays and Saturdays still available for the entire remaining of this year. So weekends are private. Are about sold out. We only have a couple left. Don't hang around too long if you're thinking about booking it. A Saturday, I think we only have 2. What's on the board for the weekends is all we will have for the rest of the year. We do, however, have a decent amount of weekday availability still remaining, so you may be able to find what you're looking for during the week if you're looking for a weekday session. And just you can find us on Facebook, type in the search 187PI, and we'll pop up. or just go directly to our website. And just a heads up, there is a very, very, very special, brand new escape game theme that is going to be cracked out in February. I'll give you a little teaser. The theme is on vampires. And it is going to be fascinating. I can't wait. We'll be sharing more information as it becomes available. It's in the developmental stages right now, but oh my gosh, those of you who love our escape games, keep your eyes out for the vampire theme coming February. And I would like to let you all know what's going on here at our fabulous network, WBHM-DB. We have some fascinating shows by some amazing hosts and interesting guests. All the shows air at 8 p.m. Eastern, so by golly, 8 p.m. every evening, you're sitting down after work, winding down. This is the place to be, right here. On Sunday nights, we have Fate Magazine radio show with host Kat Hobson. On Monday nights, we have Paranormal Pride show with host Denise Pridemore. Wednesday nights, we have Paranormal Experience show with host Kat Hobson. Thursday nights, we have the Full Spectrum Project with hosts Pete and Brian. Also featuring on their show is the Weird World News with Angie Mole. Now, you'll want to be sure you tune into those shows as well as you're winding down from a tough day. Relax and get into your paranormal vibe. I want to take a brief moment now to thank everyone for listening to tonight's live broadcast. Please remember, be kind and be positive. What you put out is what comes back to you. I wish everyone a very happy weekend. Keep safe. Good night, friends.
This is Jason Bland, host of Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, where we stream live as a webcast every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, with guests who will blow your mind. Live ghost box sessions where you can call into the show to see if the spirits will talk to you, and the World Wide Web of Weird with the latest in paranormal news and evidence. We're bringing the weird every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow and subscribe.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.